You're talking to an elitist, so I don't really spend a lot of time anymore worrying about the lowest common denominator mentality. I mean, I think for a long time I felt like, there was some kind of mysterious larger audience out there for what I do, and now I know there's not, so I don't even care anymore. If you talk to anyone who knows me really well, last 2 years have been really insane for me, and there's been a lot of people who I trust very much who are like, dude, you have to stop caring about what other people think, because honestly, for some reason, I'm very sensitive, even though I'm bombastic, and if anyone knows anything about me, they probably have certain crazy ideas about what they think I'm all about. But I think about my relationship to the world constantly. If you're talking about things that are overriding, I'm always looking at my position in society and in the world and like trying to go, what the hell is going on here? Like, so, it's like, to make an analogy about like Apple and the way their operating system works and the rest of the world is very, very obvious to me that I'm extremely out of step. So whatever.
Weasel, you're speaking directly to my heart right now.
Okay. Well, I'm sure I have a few more words for you as time goes on.
No, that's serious. That's a struggle I've been coming to grips with lately, which is that I'm kind of a weirdo, and being okay with that, with being a weird. And it's like, oh yeah, I'm not, the stuff I make may not be for everyone.
Sometimes in context, we are less weird. I've certainly been in places where I felt less weird, where I felt like I was in the right place at the right time. I had peers around me who got it. I had an audience who got it. Right now, 2014, no. I have a lot of peers, but they're so spread out, particularly in New York. Like, I'm getting ready to move to Philadelphia. I'm done with New York. Like, the reason why I came here, the experiment, wasn't at all a failure, but I feel like there's no further I can go with what I'm doing here. Like, it really is for me a case of doing the right thing at the wrong time. So instead of like banging my head against the wall and like acting like, I'm waiting for something to turn around, I'm going to do what I've always done, which is recontextualize myself, because I'd rather be at the bottom looking up than at the like middle, just like hanging out, So, I think a lot of things are about context. I think, I have a friend who lives in Cleveland, and he really hates it there, and he keeps texting me in the middle of the night, dude, I hate it. I got to get out of here. And I'm like, yes, do it. Leave. That's exactly it. He's like, no one gets me here. I'm like, then leave, because the thing is, like, if no one gets you there, it's probably going to be a long time before anyone gets you there. I mean, things happen cyclically, especially in culture. Like right now, I play in a rock band, and it seems like rock bands are not what most people are interested in, but people still listen to rock music. So I don't understand. To me, like, the context is so weird that, as a guy who's been doing music kind of professionally for 25 years and having things sort of go, I mean, I've always been out of phase, but, there are little blips where it seems like it's more well received. I really have to think about context all the time. And if something's not working, it seems so obvious to me to just change the parameters, and that could be a city or who you're working with or what you're eating or a million things,
I mean, that's something that you've done periodically, like Chicago to San Francisco to New York and then now Philly. So you're saying, like, not just like change, like, I like that, because when I think of I studied philosophy, and a lot of American philosophy is like super shitty, and it tends to make you think of things as single units, versus like, say, German and French philosophy, which makes you think of things in context with each other, and not just in context, but like the relationships with each other. And it's not about like you as a single unit, but like how you relate to the people around you and how they relate to you, or your context, or things like that. So you moving, it's like a grand recontextualizing, I guess, of yourself, where you're like, all right, it's not just like the people around, it's like this entire unit around me. Yeah. Is that right?
Yes, it is. Someone very close to me said recently, you hate change. And I kind of thought about that when she said that. Kind of stumped me because I was like, well, on one hand, yes. I mean, I'm a Taurus. I don't pay much heed to zodiological rhetoric, but apparently being a Taurus, I am very stubborn and bullheaded, you know, and I've really stuck to my guns for a long time artistically. At the same time, I'm getting better and better through the years at realizing when the jig is up, you know. And for me, New York is just like not happening. Like I don't like what's happening here culturally. I don't really dig what's going down. So, okay, I can sit around and complain about it, or I can leave. You know, if you're not wanted at the party, leave, go to another party. There's another party. Maybe you have to make the party. I'm used to having to make my own party. You know, I'm used to having to make my own context. Like, I come into town and, you know, I have fairly big balls and I like to swing them around and go, hey, you, come over here. You're going to be in a band with me. What? Oh, no. You know, and like start browbeating them into greatness. I mean, sometimes you have to manifest, you know, and you have to visualize things. If you can't visualize it, you're probably never going to achieve it. And that's what I keep telling people. You know, I like to visualize things. I see projects. I see possibilities. And then from there, it's like looking around and seeing who's around and seeing who you can sort of like force or like encourage or, you know, make do the things you want. And then, of course, usually turns out completely different. But, you know, to me, you know, I think someone crass might say, oh, you can't handle New York. It's like, man, I'm too cool for New York. This place is square, man. I mean, it's like, yeah, okay, I guess you can go get like pizza at 5 a.m. or whatever, but I don't really see what that's relevant to like what I'm doing. I mean,
yeah,
people here are into like what, I don't know, like DJ nights or something. I mean, I don't give a shit about that. You know, like you can have it. Have your DJ nights, kids. I'm going to go to Philadelphia and play more weird free jazz and more revivalist no wave music and, you know, whatever, more brutal prog, whatever I can come up with. You know, I don't really need New York to be an artist. I came here to step up my game and I did.
Yeah.
And now I'm just like, oh wait, everyone's so insular here. It's like no one knows or cares who anyone else is. It's nuts. It's just like, I guess I want to have an impact on a community, and I have in a way. I have like my peers here, and I have really close friends. I mean, some of the best musicians I've ever played with are here, hands down. But the audience is zilch. The venues are zilch. No one cares. Everyone's so beaten down and bedraggled. I mean, it almost seems like there's nothing more to be done here, as far as I'm concerned. Like, I can do more of same, but I don't want to do more of same. I already did that. So, you know, to me, it's like, okay, well, what's wrong? The context. Okay, change the context.
It is New York. I mean, the way it is moving now, I can't understand why someone, if you don't have to be here, like, I have to be here or LA. If I want to do comedy and I want to be connected to that community, there's two places I can be. And even now, New York is feeling a little, I'm like, if I really want to write television and things like that, there's not a lot of opportunities here.
LA, man.
It's LA. And
LA is having a little renaissance, I think, in terms of being a poor scumbag and being able to have fun and live. And in New York, I mean, forget it.
It's just, the thing is, money is choking the city. Like, like elite money, Wall Streety types. I know I'm being very like vague and stereotypy here, but it's also kind of true.
We'll do that.
Be vague and stereotypy.
I would like to blame it on certain people, a certain class of person, and a certain cultural identity that these people have. I mean, I honestly think the people that are flocking to New York don't get it. The reason why they're coming to New York is dead. It's not here anymore, and furthermore, they don't like that stuff. The reason why New York is cool is dead. And the people who come here don't like that stuff anyways. When they see the stuff now that's happening, that's like the stuff they think was cool, oh, CBGBs, they don't fucking like it. So fuck these people, you know? Like, I don't want to be around these people. Seriously, it's like, oh, you know, no one said this to my face. Like, oh, Weasel's leaving New York. I mean, I could really give a shit what people think. But, like, if someone said that, it would be like, are you kidding me? If I can't make it there, nobody's gonna make it there. You know, I mean, I'm tough. You know, like I can endure a lot of bullshit, and I've endured a good amount of bullshit here. I wouldn't say it was like, oh my God, like I didn't get, my car stolen the first day and, my identity stolen. I didn't have any really like catastrophic stuff happen here. It's just, the pressure was fine. But at the end of the day, it was like, okay, what am I going to do? Play like one more free jazz gig to like 2 people, like who cares? I've been doing this for 25 years. It's like, new stuff next.
Here's a question. This is, you said before, having to create your own party. Uh-huh. It's something that I often have to do, which is like I have an idea for something. I don't see it currently in the comedy landscape or something like that. So I'm the one who has to go out and wrangle the people over. Mm-hmm. Hey, let's do this thing. We're going to make this show. We're going to do this, whatever it is. And I'm getting. I'm like, I kind of wish I would be the one invited to the party rather than I'm the one who has to create the party.
Get over that.
Get over it.
The sooner you get over that, the better you are. I mean, some people, somebody said to me, man, with your band, you like run the whole thing. You like write all the music, you book the tours, you do all the promotion. It's like boo-hoo. It's like, well, yeah, but somebody has to do it. It's fine. If I don't want to do it, I can always stop, and guess who will care? 0 people. You know what I'm saying? Like, to be part of culture at this point is totally optional. It's like a folk art. Even in comedy, it's like, there are millions of comedians, and like, who cares about most of them? Nobody. And it's not to say that they're not good.
Right.
There's plenty of good ones. Most of the geniuses I know are totally struggling right now in the music scene. Like there's no glory in it whatsoever. It's a folk art. It's something that they do because they, the people I know who are really good at it, it's a compulsion. They have to do it.
Yes. Yeah.
So do I. I'll die trying. Honestly, I'm sure of it. I will literally die trying because this is what I want to do. This is, doing music and like being part of like the musical community and trying to work with other people. That's the only thing that makes sense to me in reality. Mm-hmm. Somebody's like, oh, maybe you need to get a job. It's like, I have a job. I have about 20 jobs. You know what I'm saying? I don't get paid a minimum wage to do them most of the time, but like I have plenty of jobs. Like if you want to run in that little hamster wheel, you can go ahead and just wear yourself out there. That's for you. That's not for me. Some people are different. Some people don't get it. I don't get it. I don't understand it. I don't understand why you would hi. I'm not denigrating anybody who like, goes and puts in, 10 hours a day at a job. That's fine. I mean, there's a means to an end to that. I mean, I come from a lower middle class background. I don't have like secret money or anything.
Yeah.
To me, like class is not something that I like. If someone's part of a class, I don't have like a problem with them innately. You know what I mean? That's just a lot of that's circumstantial. But what am I getting at? I like to extrapolate heavily, so
I feel resentment sometimes. I know what you're saying. Like I mean, it's not like I came from like a solid middle class background, but there's some like when I see how easy it is for certain wealthy people to like kind of move through their connections, and I'm like, oh, you didn't have to work for that. I get like this chip on my shoulder. I'm not saying it's right. Well, I just feel it.
Well, but there's levels of privilege, and I'll acknowledge that I have some advantages just because of being a white male.
Yeah.
That, other people certainly do not have. So I'm not going to
exactly.
I'm not pissing and moaning here that I've been given the short end of the stick. I just see reality for what it is, and sure, I'll complain about it. I mean, ask anybody who knows me. I'm one of the best in the business at complaining. I can put out a lot of negative energy. But I think there's a certain point where you just have to accept the playing field, and I accept that, in certain ways I'm privileged, in certain ways I am not privileged. And okay, if that's the if that's the hand of cards you're dealt, that's your hand of cards. So for me, to get back to this whole class thing, it's like, to be honest, I never made the rent once when I lived in New York for 5 years. I was making money, and I wasn't making enough money to literally pay the rent. Mm-hmm. And to me, it's like, where is this going? Nowhere. The way culture is, it's so saturated. I mean, if John Coltrane or the Beatles came out right now, people would be like this on Facebook. Meh. Like no one would care. So like that's the playing field. Okay, we're coming back around. The motivation for doing stuff like this, like comedy, music, for some people it's not that deep. It's like a fun thing they like to do. Great, whatever. For some people it's like a construct that places a meaning on reality because there's no other meaning. It's like metaphorical, allegorical. For me, it's like a really heavy thing. It's like the way that I interface with reality.
That is interesting. I have a question about that later on, so we'll wind our way back to it. Mm-hmm. Actually, this is a good time. I have for this. You mentioned your background. This is a segment I call Proustian Moment. What sights or sounds will bring you back? What's your Proustian moment? A time machine of taste or scent. What's your Proustian moment? What's your Proustian moment? What's your Proustian moment? Do-do-do-do-do-do-do-do. Oh, in post, there's a theme song. The question is there some kind of sensory experience that brings you back to your childhood?
Probably a lot of sensory experiences that bring me back. I keep my cache very clear in my random access memory up here in my brain because I have a lot going on. And, as time goes on, it seems that I can remember things from a long time ago, but I can't remember things from a short time ago. So I know I'm not bonkers. I'm not losing it. I'm just, it reflects on the way I am. So, I'll see, smell, hear, touch, taste things that remind me of little frames or blips in my memory. It's funny. I think I thought of something yesterday. I was like, oh, I bet he'd like to hear about that. But, once again, the RAM is just boop, it's gone. There's all kinds of things like that, like certain kinds of food that I ate when I was growing up. I mean, my family ate kind of trashy fare, you couldn't really get good produce back then. Like an apple tasted like an old sock, and so, I had a real innate hatred of fruits and vegetables until I was about 30 years old and realized I had to start eating them or I was going to die, because produce in the 70s sucked so bad. But, I have strong, like right now I can smell the Salisbury steak TV dinner. I can sort of taste the salty sting of the Lowry's taco seasoning on Friday nights. I grew up in trashy Rockford, Illinois, and we used to have, like McDonald's on Friday night. Like that was a big thing. So, I don't know. I can see the wallpaper on my room as a kid right now. It's like, I think when you're younger and you're like I was, maybe insular, you think that everything that's part of your paradigm is super significant. Like the bands I like are the best bands in the world. Like when I was a kid, I used to sit, I had, maybe at some point when I was a kid, 6th grade, 7th grade or something, I had maybe like 15 LPs that I had purchased. And what I used to do was I used to sit there with a lined piece of paper and I would write out, like the title, the artist, the label, the year released, the names of the musicians on each track, so I had this like all written down, so I had this as a reference point. For me, that was my whole world at that point was like, man, I have 15 records. I have a James Chance and the Contortions record, and I have Big Country's first album, and I know who played guitar on those things. I don't know. I'm a social person, but I'm definitely in my own head. If that's the definition of insular, then I'm guilty. But, I like other people. Not a lot of them, but but I guess I do. I don't know. I've met a lot of people in my life, and I like a lot of people. But I guess that the people I like are a small fraction of the people in the world. Not that I wouldn't like more, but, the context is everything. Sometimes you're the wrong kid at the party. You know what I'm saying?
That's how you make your own party.
You do. Keeps going back to that, but Yeah, I don't know. I mean, you could probably say a word and it would evoke, something in my distant past as a child or something like that. I remember watching Kiss Meets the Phantom of the Park when it came on TV, when it was premiered. I think it was maybe NBC. But that was a big deal. That was like camping out in the living room, like waiting with bated breath, like, oh, is it 7 o'clock yet? I remember like sitting on a blanket, and I remember the small crappy TV we had on this little like nightstand, or it was kind of a drawer or whatever, and I remember the sort of the dusky sunlight coming through the curtains, the room was real dim, and being real psyched to watch Kiss Meets the Phantom of the Park. I mean, I guess it was probably like 1978. So, I can remember that crap, sure.
There's something, when you were talking about like writing down the names of everyone that played on each track and everything, there's something precious about that, like, that we grew up with, where that knowledge was
harder to find.
Yeah, it's not like if I want to know anything now. I mean, this is not like I'm not making like some grand cultural point. This is banal at this time, but like it's very easy to find information. But then it was like I don't want to say sacred because I don't really mean it like that. Like I didn't feel any kind of like I don't know if I've ever really felt a religious feeling. You know what? Once when I was I've taken one trip to Europe in my life, and that was to Italy, and we went to the tomb of Saint Assisi, Francis of Assisi, right? Mm-hmm. And then I kind of felt like that reverence there, even though I'm not Christian in any way. I'm Jewish, but I'm not like, I don't believe anything really. But there was something you could feel like, oh, okay, I can kind of understand what people feel. I can get it. You got the
heebie-jeebies?
I can get it. Well, I don't know what it was. There was something where like, oh, I get it, just in that moment. But so I don't really mean sacred, but there is something like how about meaningful? That's a better word.
I mean that's called generation gap.
Yeah,
I mean something that's intensely meaningful to one generation means absolutely nothing to the next, and I acknowledge that too. I know that the values I have are, I wouldn't say they're extinct, but they're definitely not the current values. But then again, I meet people every once in a while. I play with a saxophonist named Chris Pitsiokis, who's 24 years old, and that guy thinks like I did back in the day, So it's interesting. I mean, what we're talking about is the status quo. Mm-hmm. There's drift in the opinions of the status quo, but there will always be these weird, isolated people who are involved in ideals that seem archaic because of the context, but I don't think like what I believe in or what I stand for is like obsolete or archaic at all. Right. I think it's completely current. I just think it's not what most other people are interested in for whatever reason. Sometimes people like sitting on flagpoles and eating goldfish, I don't know, sometimes they like,
piling in phone booths and wearing raccoon.
Yeah, exactly. You could totally do that today.
Jackets.
You could totally do that today, and I'm sure there are flagpole sitting revivalists, but that's a very, very small. It's interesting because when you work on a craft like comedy or music or art or movies or anything, ultimately most people don't really care how much time and struggle and blood and trouble you put into it. They just don't care. So like if you're going to worry about that, you're in the wrong business. You know what I'm saying? Like, to me, I know that no one gives a shit how many hours I put into making anything. They just want to hear it. And if they like it, it's great. And you may have put 100,000 hours into something, and someone listens to it for 45 minutes. They're like, oh, yeah, that was good, and walks away. I mean, that's called life. That's the way it goes. I've pissed and moaned about this before, but I do feel like I'm at a point where I finally just go, well, dude, you can be your own worst enemy if you want to like worry about all this crap, because it's always going to be there. You're always going to be like in the minority culturally, and no one's going to get it. Oh, they don't appreciate it, blah, blah, blah. I have pissed and moaned about that for years and years, but now I'm at the point where it's just like, man, I don't know. I mean, like, I'm pretty good at what I do. I guess I should just be glad I can do it, and I don't work a normal job, and like, I am best friends with some of my idols. I'm best friends with some of the most brilliant musicians in the world. I guess that's got to be its own thing at this point, because the 20th century is over. The money is gone.
Weasel, that seems very mentally healthy, whereas I'm a ball of anxiety and nerves.
It's not easy. It wasn't easy for me to get to this point.
What was the struggle? Like, what did you go through to be like, all right, I'm okay with this? This is like...
You want to go all the way back?
Yeah.
All right. When I was a kid, I just didn't see things the way other people did. You know, I just couldn't see why you would, say, go to church. I couldn't see why you could go to school. I did not see why you would like Michael Jackson's Thriller so much. I didn't understand a lot of things. But I definitely understood what I liked and what I wanted, and it just didn't happen to be the item of fare most of the time. So, you know, that made me... I was a dissonant chord in my own reality, because a lot of people were like, man, what's this guy's problem? And I was like, I don't have a problem. You know, my problem is your crap that I don't want around, you know? So, this still continues to this day. I mean, you know, I think one of the most important things in terms of my identity, you know, before real, rock hardening of my cultural identity was, you know, when I really started to listen to rock music and got really into rock music, and my friend in 6th grade had one of those tapes that his older cousin taped that had the Ramones on it, and it had, you know, Love Stinks by the Jay Giles Band, you know, and all Patti Smith or some junk like that. And I was just like, they don't play this stuff on the radio. What's this? And from then, you know, I started going to the library and reading all these books and seeing all these crazy pictures of these punks and going oh, see, this is what I'm all about. Mm-hmm. And I realized at that point you have to look for this crap, you know? It's the same way that now I've been doing this forever, but I'm still totally marginal. You could grab 100 people and say, have you ever heard of Weasel Walter? And almost all of them, if not all of them, will say, no, I don't know what you're talking about. That's fine. That's not the point. I'm not speaking to everyone. I'm sending out a Morse code blip that can only be received by certain transmitters. You know what I'm saying? And the people that get me, but it seems like, you know, we're part of a cultural minority. So, I mean, at one point, I think, you know, when I was growing up, I was handed a bag of lies because of the generation I was in, which seemed like you could be an iconoclastic musician and somehow make a living. And that was really on the way out in the 80s. Mm-hmm. I mean, by the time I was a young man, that was basically just a joke. You know what I mean? If you were going to make a living playing weird music, you basically won the lottery or you're already rich. Which, once again, not anything I'm going to hold against anybody. You know, maybe I did at one point, you know, but at this point, hey, man, you won the lottery. Best of luck to you. You know, buy me a sandwich sometime. I don't know, you know. Who am I? I don't know. I'm just some guy, you know. So, I think, unfortunately, I was a bit feral intellectually when I was young, and I really held on to this concept that if you just worked super hard and you were really good at what you did relatively, you know, you were very solid and you know, distinctive, that there was somehow a living to be made doing this, which I found out is pretty much a 20th century concept culturally, which is fine. I mean, I don't blow the right people. I don't blow anyone, actually. That's, you know, part of my problem is if I started, you know, sucking up to people, I probably could get further. You know, if I stopped having, if I stopped airing my dirty laundry and opinions, I could probably get further. But, you know,
yeah.
Look, I don't know, man. You know, my best friends, they pull punches the exact same way I do. And I love those people. And, I get so much energy from people who call bullshit, you know? And if someone wants to take us to task, great, let's have a dialogue. Or, you know, this almost has nothing to do with the art at this point, but I love to talk shit. You know, I've been accused of talking shit my whole life. And you know what? Here's my response. Yeah, I talk about shit. That is shit. And I'm going to talk about it. So, yeah, I talk shit because there's a lot of shit that needs to be talked about. If you want to sit here and ignore that there's so much bullshit, that's your problem. If that makes me a pariah, fine. But I call bullshit on a lot of things and people. And you know what? It's fine. Maybe I could have gotten farther in my career. Well, I didn't, so what?
But here's the question: that when you're a kid and you're seeing this, you said you were like a dissonant chord, right?
Yeah.
You also seem like extremely confident, though, in being that dissonant chord. So how do you get to that point? Like, is that reinforced as a kid? Like, do your parents and your peers and your teachers, are they like, yeah, you do that? Or like, did you have to fight to get to this point?
I was pretty miserable in high school because I felt like I knew what I wanted to do and I wasn't basically allowed to do it, and the context was just all wrong for me. So I was miserable, but I also, when I was in my element, like around my friends or like playing music, I mean, that was where I just, time stood still. So that was always what I was trying to achieve was, my parents kind of left me alone. They didn't discourage me from doing what I was doing, and maybe in some way they kind of encouraged me, but they also just like left me alone. So that insularity and maybe the self-centeredness I have comes from that I spent a lot of time alone up here, but then when I had to go back into society, rang the dissonant chord, they're like, man, something's wrong with this guy. He's kind of a dick, or, why is he so wild, or, blah, blah, blah. I definitely know that like my energy wears a lot of people out, but some people get it, and I can, I'm middle-aged. I don't have to like, I don't like have to walk into a room and start showing off. I used to all the time. I'm sorry. What was the question?
Well, what did your parents do for a living?
My father was a firefighter, and he was a Vietnam vet, and he barely had a high school education, and he basically, by the end of his career in the Rockford Fire Department, he was about as high as he could be without becoming an officer because he didn't have a college education. So, he was a grunt, and he was a union guy, and he used to paint houses and put up drywall and, all this kind of handyman kind of stuff, So he was a grunt. My mom was a housewife, and then she took a job as a secretary. I mean, they're pretty normal, I'm not. I must have had that weird chromosome or something, but they kind of accept me, for what I am, and they sort of like, I think at certain points they're like, oh, he's actually doing what he claimed he was doing, and my father always told me, the simple guy that he is, he said, look, if you're going to do something, do it, and I always took that to heart. He was like, okay, you want to play bass guitar? Okay, I'll get you a bass guitar, but you have to take lessons, okay. So I tried, taking lessons, and it was like, too hard, it's too hard, I want to quit. Well, if you quit, then we take the bass back. Oh, it was sort of like part of the deal. It was like, if you're going to play music, you're going to play music. And maybe I can thank them for that, which was basically, they kind of told me, if I'm going to do this, don't do it halfway. But that attitude is also the thing that's like, that's the rope that's going to hang me, is like, I have to go all the way.
Yeah.
I've endured a lot of like discomfort and struggle due to my decision to like go down this path, and I've also had a lot of high highs. To me, that's just part of the game. It's like, if I have any depth artistically, it's probably from the fact that I've eaten a lot of shit, and I've also, I've reached some pinnacles. And there's been stuff in the middle too, but, the low lows are definitely like part of it.
There's something, there's something satisfying about that idea of I'm doing this, I'm taking it to its logical end, and that'll be the thing that does me in. But at least it's not a half measure. At least I'm not like, it's not like the heat death of the universe where it's just like, I'm slowly losing heat,
sure.
and I'm going to die like that. Sure. No, I'm going like this may be the rope that hangs me.
Well,
but
let's touch base, because you asked about confidence, and the thing about it is, sometimes I go, wow, I'm pretty irrelevant to the current musical context. Like, people just do not get they're not into what I'm doing. They don't get it. It seems like I'm basically like invisible in some ways right now, like, to most. But at the same time, I think to myself, you know what? I spent 25 years kicking ass and I documented it. I did it. I played 2,000 gigs. I made 100 records, and no one can take that away from me. No one can say, "Oh man, he's like washed up." It's like, dude, you didn't even do 1/10 of what I did. Just shut the fuck up. You know what I'm saying? Like, I'm always trying, but sometimes life interrupts art. You know what I'm saying? Like, sometimes you just don't have the luxury to do everything you want to do.
Yeah.
And I've been maybe spoiled in that way because I've always forced reality to fit my demands. I've always demanded, I'm like, I'm going to be in 5 bands and I'm going to make like, somehow going to eat and pay my crappy rent and buy a few records. And I don't know. I don't care about health insurance or living for another week. You know, I mean, I've winged it a lot of my life. But I've had support too. But, you know, as far as confidence goes, there's a certain point where you really have to look at your position to the rest of the world and go, you know what? Like, if people aren't into my shit, it's their problem. Because I know what I'm doing. I've been doing this thing for a long time. There are people in the world who acknowledge what I do. And you know what? If the random dipshit in Williamsburg or wherever doesn't get it, that's not my problem. It's their problem. You know, I can't let that, like, oh, boo-hoo, I'm over, my brand of free jazz and no wave is washed up. Wah. You know, like, I really can't let that get to me. In a weird way, it's an opportunity when no one likes your music, because sometimes when no one likes your music, that means you might be the only person doing what you're doing, which historically usually has some... you know, some currency. I mean, you know, when Albert Eiler recorded his Village concerts, you know, in 66 and 67, I knew somebody who was at one of those shows, and he said there was nobody there. Oh, the musical legend, Albert Eiler. Well, guess what? He played to empty crowds too in New York, you know, and like, where did it get him? Oh, he's a genius because he did something nobody else did, and at a certain point, somebody realized it. Wah, wah. So I'm not saying like this is a birthright of mine just because people don't get my music. Someday I will be a genius. You know, I don't take that for granted, but I do think that in theory, history's on my side, even when people don't give a shit about my music. Because I try to keep a certain amount of quality and intensity and purity to it. And it's not about like pleasing the status quo.
There is, but here's my question. Did you ever have that fear though in you? And this may not, this may be me projecting. So, but in my like a fear of how do I put this into words? There's like. Maybe it's just a fear of discovering something about myself, that I am weird. And I think the thing that is, I know it's a weird question. You were giving me like a
no, it's fine. I'm just trying to
furrowed brow.
I want you to fill it out because I'm not sure where you're going with it.
When I think about like being myself, which is like kind of a weird person in public. So like if I'm on stage and I'm doing comedy, like my brain fills in things in a weird way that other people don't. Like there's a fear in letting that show, or like when I write a script or when I make a video or something like that, there's a fear in that kind of like, oh, this is really me and it's weird.
Yeah, but you know, the thing is you do it and you just keep going. I mean, I've been in so many bands where at the wrong place at the right time, where I'm like, I know we're killing it. I know we're killing this. We're like, no one in the world is doing this, and everyone's yawning and walking out. It's just the way it goes.
But you never had that. You never had that fear.
I've never had the fear in terms of thinking that my creativity or my ability was lacking. Well, let me reframe this. Actually, I don't really play the drums anymore. And at one point, by the end of 2013, I was shit hot. I was a virtuoso drummer. I could come in, pretty much cut anybody, and just be like a nuclear bomb going off from the first hit. Because I had those chops. I had worked on it for so long, and I was playing so many gigs. But at the end of 2013, I played a gig in New York to 0 people. And I was just like, I can't do this anymore. Like I'm banging my head against the wall. Like I'm coming in here and I'm like destroying the drum kit. I'm tearing it up. Like I'm the man. And guess what? Nobody fucking cares. Nobody. And at that point, I just went like this. I can't do this anymore. Like, what's the point of this? Am I going to get better? Maybe, but who's going to care about that? You know what I mean? It's just like, I've reached a point where it's like, if I get faster and crazier, is anyone going to care? No. And like, I always wanted to do that. And I believe in pushing myself, you know, and I pushed myself to get to that point. But there, you know, when I played that gig to nobody in the winter of 2013, I just thought to myself, man, like I need to try something else. And, you know, still people call me to play drums. I mean, this calendar year, I've played drums maybe 15 times total. You know, I'll go for like a month not touching a drum set, and then someone wants me to play a gig. And it's like, it is scary actually, because I know where I was. But you know what? When I get up there and do it, it's still fucking better than most people. And, you know, I'm really hard on myself. And I had to start just going, well, dude, like, this is where you are now. You don't really play drums anymore. So, like, still nobody cares. So why are you, like, sweating it so much? Mm-hmm. You know, I mean, that's the luxury of being obscure, is, like, your stuff isn't under a microscope. You know, like, no one's really, like, there's not going to be, like, an article in Rolling Stone saying, oh, Weasel Walter's drumming isn't quite as good in 2014 as it was at the end of 2013. You know, there's no one gives a crap. So, like, if someone thinks I'm washed up, what I offer to them is, hey, man, my life's kind of complicated, and I don't have the luxury of sitting around playing the drums all day, so fuck you. You want to hear me burning on the drums? Go listen to one of my old records, because I got about 100 of them that you haven't listened to yet. So that's, I don't know if this is confidence. It's just like reality. It's like, dude, I spent 25 years busting my balls to be a good artist. Like, you know, like, somebody's going to give me shit. If you don't like it, it's one thing.
But here's this is a question that I have from that, which is, are these real people that are saying this, or is this you criticizing yourself from inside your head?
Great question. Probably a bit from column A and a bit from column B. I mean, yeah, maybe part of my problem is that I kind of do care what people think. You know, I work with Lydia Lunch a lot, and she's, you know, I mean, she is a person of her own design, and she's like, why do you care what other people think? Because she really doesn't care what other people think. She, you know, she does not care. And I actually do care, because I want to be part of a community. I actually don't want to be a solo artist. I don't want to be like floating in space, being marvelous by myself. I actually want to be like with other people, and I want to work with other people, and I want to see what other people's visions are. You know, I really like collaborating. So, you know, somebody like Lydia likes collaborating, but at the end of the day, she's like, why do you care what people think? And it's like, because I care. I don't know. You know, sorry. I do care. I want people to like my stuff. I wouldn't have wasted this much energy to like make crap like, I made some music, you hate it, yeah, fuck you. You know, like I don't. I mean, my music's pretty obnoxious most of the time and pretty overbearing, but that's just what I like. Like, I actually like it.
Is it? I don't get that feeling for. I mean, there's something it speaks to in me that I'm very repressed, so I can't understand my emotions. I'm trying to. Okay. I'm in therapy. Okay. My fiance is very expressive, so I'm learning from example. Good. But I don't find it that like oppressive. Like, if there's something it speaks to. I was just listening to Flying Ludenbachers. Am I saying that right? I'm terrible at pronouncing things too. But last night, I'm just like, yes, like there was like an energy in my body from listening to it, and it wasn't like it added to. It was like, when I think of oppressive, I think of like something coming down from above and like pushing me into the ground, but it wasn't. It was like coming from inside and pushing me out.
Yeah, but you know what? You're getting to the heart of the matter right now, which is what I was thinking about on the train over here, and this has to do with context. There's a lot of repressed behavior in society right now, particularly in New York City, with white people. There's a lot of very repressed behavior. Here's as an artist, here's what I see when I go on stage most of the time. I'm playing my balls off, and I'm trying to like actually like give people energy. I have a lot of energy, and I'm willing to share it freely with anybody who wants it. I don't care if it's a street bum. I will give out bags of energy to anyone who wants to take one. And when I get on stage, that's what I do. And when I look at the audiences in New York, I see people who they don't want that energy. They're a little threatened by it. Maybe they feel like they don't have that energy, so they're sort of pissed. They're like, well, who is this guy? Or like they think, what is, I can do this, you know, like there's a lot of like weird, like passive aggressive repression right now in the scene, because I think a lot of people are struggling so hard just because, you know, there's a whole generation of people who grew up wanting to be like geniuses or like well-known, and and in this context, you can't do that. Mm-hmm. You can be an internet superstar, you know, to hundreds of people, or, you know, get a, you know, 1 million likes, or, you know, 1 million YouTube hits. I mean, but at the end of the day, like if everyone's getting 1 million YouTube hits, like who cares? You know, and I think like right now, 21st century is about the deconstruction of the star, because it's so easy to be so insular in 2014 that like, I mean, I don't know who's on the music charts. I have no clue. Music is my life, and I don't know who's on the music charts. I know a few names of like things that were so like pushed in my face, like I couldn't miss it, you know. But then like, you know, I spend a lot of time watching Jessie J, Ariana Grande, Iggy Azalea shred videos. Like I would rather eat rat shit than actually listen to their real music because it's so shitty. Uh-huh. But like I can't wait to like I watch their shred videos like every day, because to me that's so funny to watch these tools, these industry tools, like almost exposed for what they really are, which is like hacks.
Wait, what's a shred video?
Oh God, you're missing out. Shred videos were pioneered sort of notably by a guy named Saint Sanders, a Swedish guy, maybe about 6-7 years ago. And basically his concept was, which is not necessarily an original concept, but he kind of popularized it, was to take like a rock performance video and basically redub the music so that it sounds insane. Yeah, I mean,
I think there was one with like Santana from a while ago.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, I love these because that's how my music sounds. Like for when they make these shred videos, that's how my music sounds. Like when I'm trying to do it on purpose. And I realized that I actually, you know, was way ahead of the curve. Like in 2001, Justin Pearson from The Locust approached me and he said, hey man, I want you to be on this Queen tribute record. And I was like, okay. I was going to do the song Sheer Heart Attack because he's a good rocker and I'm a rocker. And then I was like, well, who's on it? And he sent me the list, and I was like, are you kidding me? No one's doing Bohemian Rhapsody? Are you out of your mind? And I was like, I have to do Bohemian Rhapsody. You're going to have a Queen comp and I have Bohemian Rhapsody? He's like, okay, dude, well, you know, there's like a week. You got to send it in a week. I'm like, okay. So I got on it. So basically what I did was I took the original track and then just overdubbed, you know, cacophonous, you know, shitty no wave style, like rendering over it. And then I took the track out at the end. So that all was left was like my sort of dissonant, like horrible, like cover version. And I turned it in. And then of course the record didn't come out for another year. But the thing was like idiomatically, that's what I'm into. I'm into like dissonance. And I really love pop music when it's like maniacally out of tune and retarded and, you know, messed up. So like these shred videos to me were like a godsend. Like I just love it because it sort of exposes the pompousness of these sort of industry tools, because they're so manicured and they're so run by like, you know, hundreds of staff members and, you know, people behind the scenes. Really, it's almost like if you take off the auto-tune and the production and the staff of 1,000 people, what do you have left? Just like everyone else. You know, you've got this like atonal caterwaul. So maybe for me, these shred videos, they go beyond like musical pleasure. They actually go into like demystifying the mainstream, which I think is horseshit right now. I think musical mainstream sucks. And I always liked pop and I always liked rock music, but I think right now, I couldn't tell you who's on the charts. I don't give a shit because I think it all sucks. I don't think it has anything to do with music. It has everything to do with the record industry holding on to this last vestige of like commerce and trying to shove things down people's throats. You know, if people are dumb enough to take this shit, that's their problem. It's not my problem. And you know what? Those people don't listen to my music because my music, what you get from it, that's not what they get from it. They go, this guy thinks he's so cool. He's not. This sounds bad. I don't like this. He thinks he's so great. I could do this. Blah, 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 blah. That's the way I see like the audiences in 2014. Oh, it's like, for me, it's like, man, I want to get my ass kicked by a band. I want to see a band kick my ass. And I don't see many bands kicking my ass anymore. And it makes me sad. It's like, is this obsolete to want to go on stage and kick ass? You know, maybe I'm in the wrong context. Maybe I have to get into like... Yeah, well, it's not about that because I like what I like. You know, I'm sure like there's people freaking out at like techno DJ festivals, you know, but like I don't relate to that. I don't relate to a dude like what's his face, Steve Aoki, you know, like pressing a button on a fader and then like putting his hands in the air. Like that to me is like, here's a machine gun, you know, like I just want to like annihilate it. Like, dude, like 1 million people are worshiping you because you like pressed like a pause button. Fuck you. I'm going to murder you, you know? Music is one of the things that keeps me from being a homicidal maniac. So I think people should encourage me to do more music because it keeps them safe. So everyone, if you want to PayPal some money to weaselw@juno.com, it'll keep me from murdering you all. Thank you.
Sounds like a threat.
Next question. Oh, it's a promise. No, I'm not. I don't. I'm not a killer.
Yet.
Well, no one's found the bodies. So.
Well, that means. Hold on a second. That just means you are a killer. It just means you're not a.
Oops! Did I?
You're not a. You're not one that has.
No,
been
I
found
mean,
out.
I commit entire holocausts in my brain regularly, but I don't. I'm a busy guy. I got a lot of things to do.
Sure,
so
you can't actually build the ovens. You just have to mentally build them.
Yeah, watch. They'll be like in a week. They'll be like, serial killer Weasel Walter gave a revealing speech on a podcast earlier. If we had only paid attention. Oh yeah, I'm really crying out for help, you guys.
Here's a thing though. When you were a kid, were you just, when you said dissident, were you just outside? Or were you actively oppositional? Like, I think of there being two different ways to be. Like, you can just be like, oh, well, I'm not the same as these other people. I'm going to do my own thing. Or were you like, oh, they're doing something. I'm now going to be doing whatever the opposite of that is.
I'm sure if you talk to people who saw me then, they would probably say it's a little from column A and column B. But, like, let me think about it. Like, there was a pivotal event for me where I was at a friend's birthday party, maybe around whenever Thriller came out. I guess it was 1983, so I was 11 years old. I guess that would have been 4th grade. And I was at a pool party with friends, and they kept playing the album Thriller by Michael Jackson. And I just didn't like the music. I just thought it stunk. I didn't, it wasn't like it was the most heinously offensive thing of all time, but I was just like, this is like bland and I don't like it. Like, this is not what I want to hear. And they kept playing it over and over, and finally I just was like, man, I don't want to hear this anymore. And I just ripped it off the turntable. And I remember, like, I don't remember what the transition was, but I wound up getting picked up by people and like dunked in the pool, and I had like a real fear of like having my head underwater. So it was like a little bit traumatic. And at that point, I was just like, you know what? These people are wrong. So if you want to call it a little from column A, a little from column B, I think that might be appropriate, because very early on when I was a kid, I just started looking at institutions in society and going, this is wrong. And furthermore, the people that are into this suck. So in a weird way, that is really an even amount of it, because it is a stance. It's a stance that I derived from the actual institutions, whether it was really lame music or, like I've been an atheist since I was 11 years old. It just didn't make sense to me to like believe in a God, and I just like literally like one day I was like, man, that is the dumbest idea I've ever heard of. And I never turned back, and I don't know. I mean, did I do it to be different? No, I was already different. I mean, I used to be very arrogant in the sense that I thought my differentness was a really like a position of superiority. And now I really don't feel that way necessarily, because it's kind of lonely. It's kind of like being in an outpost. Like, in a weird way, it doesn't really like behoove you to try to be different, because it really does just like that energy like sort of just pushes people away, maybe even people that you would like to be around. So I mean, I don't see like my iconoclasm or whatever you want to call it as a position of like superiority at all. I see it as like something that impedes a lot of things, but it's the way I feel. I maybe, you talk about therapy. I don't even know what that's about. I mean, I'm pretty traumatized, as a human being, like on a lot of levels, and I'm sure some people would blame a lot of that trauma on me. But I don't know, like, what am I looking for? All I'm looking for is to just keep doing what I'm doing, It's not like, I mean, I don't have a big frustration in my life where I'm like, but I just don't understand why this isn't working out the way I want to. Like, I get it. I totally get why I am where I am. And I think about it all the time. I'm like, so I think I understand myself pretty well.
There's, it's difficult though. Is the intellectual knowing and then the emotional knowing. Mm-hmm. Because I can intellectually know that, like, I'm kind of a weird dude, but like emotionally I'm just like, but I want to be with everyone else. And so there's this like contradiction. I don't know if this is within you, but there's a contradiction within me where it's those two poles pulling on each other, or like bumping into each other.
No, not for me, because I know that the people I know, for me, are the best people in the world, and I value the current friendships I have greatly. Like, I know the people who really, like, at the end of the day will toe the line for me. Those are solid people, and I get them innately, and they're not part of the status quo. Mm-hmm. Very often they have a lot of the same feelings about things I do, so I know I'm not alone. I know I'm not like some insane freak who just like thinks purple is green. Like, I don't think I'm like coming from some like totally esoteric point.
Right.
I'm just like, I have certain values that are not in touch with the status quo. I mean, this goes on forever. It's like, you want to talk about like the government and society. I mean, it's all like so fucked. Like, man, all I want to do is something simple, like I want to like have a lot of time to work on artwork, and then I want to present it to people. And then if there's like $1 to be made so that I can like eat or pay rent, I want to make that $1. I don't see how my life is so complicated in that regard. It's not like I'm like trying to do something totally crazy.
Right. You're not like, there's institutions for the things that you're interested in. They're just not the same like large institutions like the government or the Catholic Church or something like that. They're just smaller.
Well, I've been thinking about that. Part of my problem right now is that I have no real great means of exposure. I mean, I think that the old trope of like getting press in magazines, I think that's becoming obsolete. I mean, as print media is just dying, and like, since there's sort of the internet is such a DMZ in terms of information, it's like all information is kind of worthless and equal. Mm-hmm. It's like, if John Coltrane was resurrected from the dead and made a new album, that would be on the same level as some jerk who just put some techno track out on a Bandcamp page. Honestly, it's an even playing field.
Yeah.
So,
It's who can shout the loudest almost then.
Yeah, exactly. And there's certain ways I don't want to shout. I don't want to shout for publicity. I'm not going to beg somebody to like put me on Pitchfork or whatever. I don't care. It's not that I'm against it. It's just like, I'm too busy actually doing music. Like, I don't have time for all this crap.
That's a great point. Mm-hmm. So when you said high school wasn't great, were there any positive things? Like, did you have friends? Were there teachers that supported you in any way?
Well, yeah, I mean, I had all that stuff. I mean, I wasn't like an unpopular kid, actually. I mean, maybe someone can counter that, but I wasn't like unpopular. I wasn't a nerd or whatever. I mean, I was a punk. By the time I hit 7th grade, I was like a punk. And there were, at that point, we're talking like 1986, the late 80s. There were, those people were around. I mean, there was actually a scene. It wasn't like I was like the only punk in town. I was the only 16-year-old kid listening to free jazz. I will give you that. But that's a different problem. But no, I was definitely a punk, and I was more really into like the sort of no wave aesthetic, which was sort of a more dissonant kind of deconstructivist, nihilistic black humor sort of approach to like what punk was doing at the same time. You know, coming out of like Dada and surrealism and situationism and all that kind of stuff. I mean, I put those things together later on, of course, but you know, it's part of a, you know, what I do is part of a long line of artistic. It's not like I'm not really doing anything new. I mean, might be singular, but like I don't really think what I'm doing is like terribly original or new. I think it's just like a solid modernist take on a bunch of threads throughout cultural history. Mm-hmm. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So, like, I totally don't think my art is irrelevant just because people don't like it.
Oh, sure.
That's just bullshit to me. Historically, that's just wrong, you know? So in high school, I mean, I just hated school. I hated the structure of it, and I hated, you know, I did not like religion, and I was still kind of like sort of made to go to church, even though I was a closet atheist, you know, which I would never have revealed to my parents. And still have never directly done so, because I mean I don't want to insult them. You know, I don't really want to insult their beliefs. You know, and in a weird way, being an atheist is, you know, it's an affront. You know, some people are agnostics because they want to kind of like sort of like shrug their shoulders, and I'm just like, fuck it, there's no God. I'm an atheist because I'm a punk. I'm a nihilist. You know, so it's easy for me to like take a hard line on things. And in high school, yeah, man, I took a hard line. I was real feral and like loud, obnoxious, trying to get attention. Used to verbally abuse any poor sap who would walk in my way. I mean, my friends and I were vicious. We were really vicious people. I mean, we were just so full of like angst and like hatred and like energy. I mean, we really like... I mean, I'm shocked at the people from high school who will still say hi to me, honestly. So I was a fucking terror. But in a weird way, I wasn't like the main aggressor. I really like to sort of stand in the back and like egg people on and laugh like a hyena. Like I still like to do that. Like in a weird way, I'm not really like the guy. I'm not the most like ballsy, like, you know, guy. I mean, I don't really like to fuck with people so much anymore. That's not really my thing. I guess I give people a grain of salt now. You know, I don't have the energy, you know. But in high school, I was trapped, you know, and when a trapped animal, what does it do? It lashes out, right? So the key thing for me in terms of, like, growing up was to get the fuck out of my town. Because my hometown, sort of typified everything that I hated about society. It was boring. You know, oh, you got to go get a job and do this and go to church and school and blah, blah, blah. Everything about that seemed wrong. But here's the funny thing, man. My vision of leaving Rockford, Illinois as a, you know, 18-year-old was this. Apparently, me and my 3 friends were going to get a school bus, and we were going to drive to New York and live in a school bus. This was our wacky idea. And my parents come in and they're like, hey, let's talk about college. And I was like, oh, no, I'm going to live on a school bus in New York City with my friends, you know, circa 1990. And they were just like, and how are you going to get the school bus? And I was like, I don't know. Like, totally unrealistic, right? Like, almost like childish. Like, yeah, I'll just get a school bus. Well, what? I didn't have any money. You know, so, like, they're just like, well, you're going to go to school. Okay. And they're like, well, you want to do music, go to music school. Or like, okay. So I just happened to like have a brochure from a college in Chicago, and I looked at it and I went, fine, get me out of here. Let's go to Chicago. So, I mean, I was still kind of like, school's dumb, you know, but at least they were sort of like, well, if you're going to do music, go to music school. And I was like, okay. So, I mean, in terms of my personal growth, I mean, in high school, I was a caged rat. I was vicious and wild because I was backed into a corner. When I came to, you know, Chicago and started my career, or whatever you want to call it, I mean, that was sort of like me being let out of my cage. So, I mean, I was still a dick, still nuts. And I came from the punk school of like, this is what we believe in. And if you don't believe in it, not only fuck you, but I'm going to destroy you. You know, I came from a really hard line, like sort of aesthetic. I still believe in that to some degree, but I know that I'm outnumbered, so I don't waste my energy, you know, trying to like destroy everyone. But yeah, I'm very critical.
We're towards the end of the show.
Yeah. What? I'm just getting started. But
And I said we'd get back to this question later on.
Yeah.
And this is a segment I call Hey Descartes.
Hey Descartes, I wanna know just what it's like inside your head. What's the world like through your eyes? I wanna know, so hey Descartes.
Boo-doo-doo-doo-doo-doo-doo.
I'm leaving it. By the way, I'm leaving in your. There's going to be my theme, and then your theme right after it. And the question is, what is your consciousness like? Which is an odd question, but I think I can make it a little friendlier in the. How do you process information? How do you think? Some people have answered the question like, I think in sounds. Like, I don't know if you know Will Cullenhart from the Olivia Tremor Control, but he's like, he genuinely thinks in sounds. So he thinks about how to change sounds to, he's like, oh, how do I get this sound into real life? And I think personally in narrative, like the way I think is I'm able to. So I'm good at writing stories because I innately understand them, and that's how I construct reality, is into narratives.
I think in terms of vertical and horizontal lines and segments, I really not that concerned with sound per se, which is why a lot of sort of like electronic music doesn't appeal to me, because it seems to be largely about timbre, and I don't really care about that. I mean, I do care about timbre, but it's not like why I do music. Like, why I do music is because of the structural implications, and the structural thing could be horizontal or vertical, or maybe even diagonal in terms of like harmony or rhythm or the series of events. So, I mean, it's easy for me to write music because it's that simple as far as I'm concerned. You're just trying to structure events along a timeline, same way that you might do comedy. You're trying to get like. You can't just have people laughing for an hour. Like, it doesn't work that way.
Right.
It never will. So you have to think about these vertices and how you like can build someone up and then like give them that thing and then continue it and maybe reiterate it. You know, it's all structural. You just bring it back over, or like you recapitulate. So, I mean, to me, music, that's why I eat and breathe it. That's why I can free improvise. That's why I can write music, because to me it's so dumb. It's just like these vertices. I mean, I don't understand how people could have a hard time writing music if they're doing music. It's just like, dude, just pick anything and then pick the next thing. You know, you don't like that chord? Pick another one, you know, like, so I don't know.
Well, let me peel back the onion a little more then. How do you think you got into how do you think your mind was constructed? This is a weird one too. So that you are a structuralist. Because I understand that my fiance was writing a packet for a show, and we were talking about like joke writing, and I'm like, oh, well, you just do this. Here's your setup, and then you figure out what the weird thing is what's weird about it, and then you write a bunch of different punchlines, and you pick whatever the best one is, and it was just like that simple to me.
Well, I think it gets simple after you do it for a while, because I don't think innately people like us like came to the table like, oh, here's how you do it, and just started doing it. I think we discerned that eventually, like we saw the patterns in our own thinking, right?
But let me say this, though, about her. She's incredibly funny, but it's more intuitive for her. So, like, having to, like, do... Like, for me, the structure is easy, and it's not intuitive.
I feel that way 100% about word-based stuff, whether it's like writing lyrics or writing comedy. I feel like I can sit here and I can generate laughs like nobody's business, just improvising. But when it comes time to like write something down, I don't get it. And it's not that I can't get it. It's just I haven't gone through the process of understanding how to get that. Mm-hmm. And it's the same way. You know, the singer I work with in Cellular Chaos, Admiral Gray, I can give her any music, and she'll just like bump like that, just come up with, you know, she does work on it and she's very, very particular, but she can come up with, I've never stumped her musically. I mean, she'll always figure out a way to have a very tight focus in terms of like what the lyrics are and the melody and stuff. And to me, that's like magic, you know, so maybe my magic is that I can do musical things, you know, but you know.
But the structure particularly, like how do you think that your brain is good at structure? Like, is that something reinforced when you were young? Is it just something you've always kind of been good at, and then so you keep doing it?
I think we're going to probably have to talk to the psychoanalyst for that. I don't know that I have a simple answer for that. I mean, I don't know what my so-called IQ is. Maybe it's like higher than normal, and I have some aptitude towards structuralism. I don't really know. I mean, you know, you might say I'm not that smart because I've never made a dollar, you know, but like it's neither here nor there with me.
By the way,
like,
I don't want to make that argument because do you ever watch Mr. Show?
Oh, does a bear shit in the woods?
Do you remember the sketch Worthington's Law? That's one of my favorite sketches, which is that it was a satire about people who say like,
I'm smarter than Einstein because I made $100,000. Yes, I know exactly.
The more money you make, the more you're worth.
Yeah, well, these are the slave masters terms we're using, not those of the slave. I mean, when I denigrate myself in this fine podcast, I'm using the status quo's terminology. I don't believe that I'm inferior at all. Oh, no. I'm just waiting. I'm waiting very quietly. I will strike at some point. But, you know, this is all relative because, look, if there's 100,000 people who believe you're wrong, you are wrong.
Yeah.
It really doesn't matter how much you believe in what you're doing. And I can apply this to myself. I might think I've made the greatest music in the entire history of the world, but if no one agrees with me, well, then that's just one dude who thinks something about himself. That's how reality works. So at a certain point, you might know something and feel it in your heart. You might whatever that is. But at some point, if people don't agree with you, you can't beat yourself up over it. If it's a manifest, like if you're an insane person and you think red is green, okay, hats off to you. You believe that. You know what I mean? But that is not necessarily going to get you anywhere. So in a weird way, with my musical vision and my art, I just have accepted after all these years that like a lot of people just don't get it or they've never heard of it. And that doesn't mean I'm bad. It doesn't mean I'm a bad person. It doesn't mean I'm a loser. It just means like, man, it's just like the way it is. So whatever.
Do you think about other things in your life structurally?
Why? Yes, I do, because my car won't start. So I'm thinking like the whole time over here, how am I going to get a jump? And then like I have to be here at this time. So if I get it jumped, but then I got to go get the battery looked at and da-da-da. So like the whole way here, I'm like literally trying to figure out the answer to this thing that might be super simple to people. They're like, oh, you just call a truck and da-da. But I'm like, well, how can I do this without spending any money and da-da-da-da? You know, so like to me, it's like, I spend all this time thinking of this ingenious way that I can like get around spending an extra $40 or something, but like I'm totally wasting $40 worth of effort, like coming up with the problem. So like in a weird way, my structuralist approach to real life sometimes doesn't work so good. It works really good in music, but it doesn't work very good in reality. You know what I'm saying?
I do know. There's a pipeline. Look, your heart has has a Dixie cup, and there's a string tied to another Dixie cup that's at my heart. You're speaking directly to it.
Oh, we have so much agape. There's so much agape in this room, folks, and I'm not talking agave.
Good use of agape.
Yeah, well, you know, I mean, look, I actually think people, if my music was exposed to a wider audience, which I don't know how to do that, I'm pretty sure more people would like it. But my hands are a little bit tied because apparently I won't do what it takes to, like, you know, maybe it's my problem. Maybe I won't do what it takes to get it exposed to a wider audience. I'm not trying to be an obscurantist. I just I won't suck off the bridge trolls. I'm sorry. I don't like that taste in my mouth. I want to be friends with somebody because I'm their friend or I respect them.
Yeah, that's a huge theme on the show, talking to people about that, about what I call non-cynical networking, where you are networking with people who, because you genuinely enjoy what they do and you like them as a human being and not because of what they can do for you. And I am always very skeptical about whether that really works or not, because I can't do the other thing. I can't be fake.
Yeah.
And it's I don't know. There's just something where like I'm existentially allergic to that, where I just can't put on a fake face if I don't like the person.
Well, then you pay the price.
Yeah.
You got to look at everything in terms of history. I mean, it's like the people that don't do that are the exceptions, or the lottery winners. And honestly, I don't think I'm going to win the lottery. I don't believe it, you know. So I had to accept at some point that I was that in a weird way, things were going to always be hard for me because I won't play the game. So in a weird way, like, you could say I'm my own worst enemy. Like, I'm holding myself back because I won't play the game. There's just games I don't want to play. I want to make cool music. I don't want to spend time generating tweets all fucking day and all this bullshit. You know, I don't care about that. People are like, well, then you're not going to do, you know, if you're not going to generate 100 tweets per day, then no one's going to notice you. And I'm like, well, then I guess no one's going to notice me because I won't do that shit. And they're like, but you can automate it. You could have someone else do it. And I'm just like, I don't care. I'm a musician. You know, and as such, I guess I'm a bit obsolete in my modus operandi because I refused, like, you know, I mean, I do Facebook and, like, as fun, you know, and, like, you know, because it's like I have to reach somebody somehow, you know, like I'm not like trying to be like the complete Luddite or something like, ho, those computers will steal your soul, get them away from me. I do use a flip phone for text, but, you know, I guess I am sort of a Luddite. Who am I kidding? Can we go suck up to Bob Odenkirk? Because I'd actually suck up to him right now.
I would in a second.
Like, dude.
But that's the thing. That's what I call non-cynical. Because I'm such a unabashed fan of his.
Me too.
Well, seems like a good place to end.
Yeah, bye, Bob. Thanks for listening.
Weasel, thanks so much for being on the show.
Oh, unholy